Wait, this is one fall.
Welcome back to another episode, number 28. The Most High is great. Let's get it. Another one for the tribe. All praise the Most High. We're just staying in check, searching for the Melchizedek. You let me know what you think. Just talking lost tribes in promised land, the seed of Abraham. You are now tapped in with Dragon Canoe. We are steadily rowing and we are constantly flowing. Let's go. We back for another one. Let's get it. You know how we do it. We gotta get the flute flowing, get the vibes going. He looked about, and there, beside his head, was a cake baked on hot stones and a jar of water. He ate and drank and lay down again. The angel of the Most High came a second time and touched him and said, "Arise and eat, or the journey will be too much for you." He arose and ate and drank, and with the strength from that meal, he walked 40 days and 40 nights as far as the mountain of the Most High at Horeb. There he went into a cave, and there he spent the night. Then the word of the Most High came to him, and he said to him, "Why are you here, Elijah?" He replied, "I am moved by zeal for the Most High, the Most Highest of hosts, for the Israelites have forsaken your covenant, torn down your altars, and put your prophets to the sword. I alone am left, and they are out to take my life. Come out," he called, "and stand on the mountain before the Most High." And lo, the Most High passed by. There was a great and mighty wind, splitting mountains and shattering rocks by the power of the Most High. Wow! But the Most Highest of hosts was not in the wind, and after the wind, an earthquake. But the Most High was not in the earthquake. After the earthquake, fire. But Hawa was not in the fire. And after the fire, a soft murmuring sound. When Elijah heard it, he wrapped his mantle about his face and went out and stood at the entrance of the cave. Then a voice addressed him, "Why are you here, Elijah?" He answered, "I am moved by zeal for the Most High, the Most Highest of hosts, for the Israelites have forsaken your covenant, torn down your altars, and have put your prophets to the sword. I alone am left, and they are not out to take my life." And then Hawa said to him, "Go back by the way you came, and on the wilderness of Damascus. When you get there, anoint Hazael as king of Aram. Also anoint Jehu, son of Nimshi, as king of Israel, and anoint Elisha, son of Shaphat, of Abel Mahola, to succeed you as prophet. Whoever escapes the sword of Hazael shall be slain by Jehu, and whoever escapes the sword of Jehu shall be slain by Elisha. I will leave in Israel only 7,000, every knee that has not knelt to Baal, and every mouth that has not kissed him," saith the Most High. Let's go. Episode number 28. The Most High is great. We're talking Section 107 of the Copyright Act, providing the statutory framework for determining whether something is a fair use and identify certain types of uses. We're talking teaching, scholarship, and research. Let me know what you think. Leave a note in the comments. Are you the dracons, the dragons found here in America? Let me know what you think, man. This is like almost like a part 2 to why are the Hebrews connected to the Indians, man. We're just gonna ride the wave, man. You're now tapped in with Dragon Canoe. We're steadily rowing and we're constantly flowing. All praise the Most High. American, a noun. American, talking copper-colored cons, found here. The Aboriginals or copper-colored races found here by the Europeans, but now applied to the descendants of Europeans born in America. Aboriginals, American, con, or copper-colored races found here. All right, let's get it, man. We back into Tecumseh, Pucashinwa. To these villages came Pucashinwa, by this time a mature man. There he met and married a girl named Methoatski. Her origins are unclear. Some sources say that she was a Creek. We're talking Tuckabatchee Creeks. One of the white civilians who was present at the 1810 meeting at Grouseland later claimed that he had chatted with Tecumseh about his parents, and according to this man, Tecumseh had said that his mother was a Cherokee captive. His mother was a Cherokee captive, right? Are we talking slavery or are we talking Cherokee captives? Rival tribes sold to one another who had been, gotta run that back, who had been adopted into the Shawnee tribe, the Pequot Sept, and the Turtle Unsoma. There is no evidence, however, they say that this conversation actually occurred. Pucashinwa spent a few years in Alabama and started a family there. He and Methoatski had a son named Chicksika and a daughter named Tecumseh. Then sometime in the early 1760s, Pucashinwa took his family north to the Shawnee settlements in the Ohio Valley. Another son, Sowasakaw, was born along the way. Some accounts say that Methoatski bore another daughter after arriving in Ohio. If so, the boy who was born in the spring of 1768, was the family's fifth child. We're talking Tecumseh, Tecumseh, the Crouching Panther. All right, copper-colored cons found here. This picture says a portion of the Indian delegation that visited Governor General George Prevost in 1814. So this is after Tecumseh passes. They say, move this out the way, Tecumseh's sister Tecumseh is believed to be the second woman from the left. Let's go. Talking copper-colored cons found here. Tecumseh, Tecumseh, the Crouching Panther, Pucashinwa, Methoatski. As her delivery date drew near, Methoatski and her attendants retired to a secluded spot 2 arrow flights southeast of Chillicothe, talking to Chillicothe, near the banks of the Scioto River. One night, as Methoatski kept up to the hut and waited, the other women saw a shooting star sweep across the sky and sink into the western horizon. One passed across, the woman excitedly told Methoatski. Almost immediately, Tecumseh was born. Talking the Crouching Panther, the shooting star, Tecumseh. It was Methoatski herself who witnessed the comet. Both accounts are plausible as to the circumstances, if not the location of Tecumseh's birth. We're talking the southwest Ohio Valley. They also convey something of the significance of Tecumseh's name, the meaning of which can only be rendered imperfectly in English. Even the pronunciation is elusive. Ruddle, who spoke with English and Shawnee fluently, gave it as Tecumseh. Talking Old Chillicothe, Old Piqua Town, Tecumseh's birthplace in Ohio. Chillicothe, T'Challa. Are we talking Black Panther? T'Challa. The Shawnee name pronounced Theoatoa. From this place they removed to the prairies near Chillicothe, which place was named for one of their divisions, the Chillicothes, who lived there. A few afterwards joined the Creeks, but they have long since left them. Others went beyond the Mississippi. We're talking Chillicothe, Ohio, Mound City, right? Mound City, Chillicothe. Pucashinwa invited two elderly relatives or friends to the family's wigwam, calling upon them to perform the sacred naming ceremony on the 10th day after his son's birth. The name givers were to ponder and pray until they divined two names, from which the parents might choose. On the morning of the 10th day, Methawatiski cleaned herself and her infant well, left her hut, and returned to the family wigwam. Her caregivers prepared the naming feast. Then the name givers declaimed on the logic behind the names they offered, one which presumably incorporated the shooting star metaphor. They called on the master of life, the most highest of hosts, the Shawnee creator, to protect the baby, and exhorted the parents to raise him well. Having heard the name givers out, Pucashinwa and Methawatiski made their choice. The name they chose, Tecumseh, derives from Nilani Tecamatka, meaning I cross the path or way. I cross the path or way. One who passed across. Tecumseh. I crossed the path or way of living beings. As Tecumseh was born into the Panther Umsoma. The Panther Umsoma. We're talking Chillicothe. The patrilineal clan or name group, the animal whose path he crossed was a panther. No ordinary panther, but rather a miraculous creature of transcendental existence that lived in the water, but periodically burst across the skies as a shooting star. We're talking Tecumseh. I crossed the path or way, who crossed the path of the panther to Chillicothe, a miraculous creature of transcendental existence, but periodically burst across the skies as a shooting star. Let's go. Prester, a meteor thrown from the clouds with such violence that by collision it is set on fire. We're talking Prester. Mysterious Serpent Mound, same valley Tecumseh is born. One of North America's most spectacular effigy mounds. Serpent Mound is a gigantic earthen sculpture representative of a snake, built on a spur of rock overlooking Ohio Brush Creek. Around 1000 AD, they say, by the Fort Ancient culture, the earthwork was likely a place of ceremonies dedicated to a powerful serpent spirit, they say. The site is located on the edge of a massive crater, possibly formed by the impact of a small asteroid, a meteor thrown from the clouds with such violence that by collision it is set on fire. The panther, we're talking panther, the celestial or commonplace, was a formidable creature in the 18th century Ohio Valley. A Shawnee male whose name incorporated that of the panther inspired awe, because the panther's hunting skills were an object of envy. Shawnee males of the Panther clan conceived of themselves as panthers, and the birth of a boy of the clan beneath a celestial incarnation of the beast portended immense hunting prowess. Let's go. We're talking beneath a celestial incarnation. We're talking Draco. We're talking the drinking gourd. We're talking the Black Panther to Chillicothe, Ohio Valley, Tecumseh, Tecumseh, the Crouching Panther. All right. So Tecumseh and Tenskwatawa begin their quest. 1805, Tecumseh's brother Lalawetika transforms himself into Tenskwatawa, the prophet. launching a Native American spiritual crusade. We're talking Presters, a Native American spiritual crusade. Tecumseh and Tenskwatawa found Prophetstown, a village on the Tippecanoe River in Indiana. And the Treaty of Fort Wayne cedes more Indian land to the whites in 1809. 1810, Tecumseh meets with Territorial Governor William Henry Harrison to oppose the Treaty of Fort Wayne. 1811, the Battle of Tippecanoe. Harrison defeats Indians led by Tenskwatawa is going down in Prophetstown. 1812, the War of 1812, the New Madrid earthquake. War breaks out between United States and Great Britain. Tecumseh allies his forces with the British. 1813, Tecumseh is killed by Harrison troops in the Battle of Thames. Once again, it's going down in Prophetstown. We're talking Tecumseh, Shalakatha, Ohio, right? We're talking Prophetstown. It's going down. Kaskaskia, we're talking. Come on, Mound Towns, Shalakatha, Fort Wayne, Little Turtles Town, Wapakoneta. Let's get it. We're talking treaties. It's just going down in Prophetstown. Let's get it. Triangles represent Indian villages and squares represent forts. Take a look. After both the American Revolution and the War of 1812, we're talking going down in Prophetstown, the War of 1812, more than 42,000 black people fled to Canada, seeking refuge. The British government offered freedom to blacks in return for their pledges of fealty to the crown. As a result, some 5,000 left Georgia in 1782. In the next year, more than 3,000 sailed from South Carolina after the Treaty of Paris was signed. So we're connecting the dots. The War of 1812, the Shawnee Indians, Tecumseh, so-called black people fleeing to Canada, right? Talking 5,000 left Georgia, they say, right? We're just connecting the dots here. We're just following the drinking gourd. Says Tecumseh's Southern Odyssey, 1811. He was down in Tennessee. He was met the Cherokees, the Chickasaws. We're talking Upper Creek, Tuckabashie, Alabama, Black Warrior River. Let's get it. Talladega, Tuckabashie Town. Remember, triangles represent Indian villages, squares represent forts. Running water, Tennessee River, New Madrid on the Mississippi. Keep it all in your mind. Mushalatubi, Black Warrior River, Tuckabashie, Tallapoosa River. Shout out to Montgomery, Alabama. Let's get it. Tuckabashie Creeks, Black Warrior River. Says the New Madrid earthquake. We're talking New Madrid earthquake. The greatest earthquake recorded in North America centered in this area December 16th, 1811 to February 7th, 1812. We're talking the War of 1812. Tecumseh stomps down every house in Tuckabashie Town. 1,874 quakes felt at Louisville, 250 miles away. Tremors also felt at Boston, Detroit, New Orleans, Reelfoot Lake, covering 25,000 acres, formed when some streams changed courses. New Madrid, Missouri was destroyed, formed when some streams changed courses. We're talking Black Warrior River, Mississippi River, New Madrid. We're talking mud flood here, are we? Let me know what you think. Leave a note in the comments. We're talking some streams changed courses. The force of the land upheaval 15 miles south of New Madrid created Reelfoot Lake and drowned the inhabitants of an Indian village. turned the river against itself to flow backwards, devastated thousands of acres of virgin forest, and created 2 temporary waterfalls in the Mississippi. Was Tecumseh really a Hebrew prophet? Let's go. We're talking and stomped down every house in Tuckabatchee. In the New Madrid region, the earthquakes dramatically affected the landscape. We're just connecting the dots. Are we talking mud floods? We're talking Mississippi flowing backwards, causing bank failures along the Mississippi, landslides along Chickasaw Bluffs, and uplift in subsidence of large tracts of land. Are we talking mud floodplain? Let's get it. For the day when Tecumseh would reach Detroit, the morning they had fixed upon as the day of his arrival at last came, he must have supernatural powers. He has to. A mighty rumbling was heard. The earth began to shake. Sure enough, every house in Tuckabatchee was shaken down. The exclamation was in every mouth. Tecumseh has got to Detroit. The effect was electric. The message he had delivered to the big warrior, we're talking big black warrior river, delivered to the big warrior, was believed, and many of the Indians took their rifles and prepared for the war. The reader will not be surprised to learn that an earthquake had produced all this, but he will be doubtless that it should happen on the very day on which Tecumseh had arrived on the New Madrid. Tecumseh had arrived at Detroit, and in the exact fulfillment of his threat, it was the famous earthquake on the New Madrid on the Mississippi. Is Tecumseh a Hebrew prophet? Let's go. We're talking Black Warrior River, big Black Warrior of the West Central Alabama, formed by the junction of the Mulberry and Locust Forks, and flowing in a southwesterly direction, it empties into the Tombigbee River after a course of about 180 meters and is navigable south of the city of Tuscaloosa. We're talking Alabama. Again, shout out to the Gump, man. We're talking Moundville, Alabama, site of a prehistoric Native American political and ceremonial center, was America's largest community north of Mexico. Between 1,000 and 3,000 people lived in this fortified town with guard towers, right? Paint the picture, man. What are we really talking about here? Cities of gold with guard towers. Moundville served on the capital of a powerful chiefdom of about 10,000 people over a 60-mile stretch of the Black Warrior River Valley. Right? We're talking Black Warrior River Valley. We're talking the New Madrid. The Mississippi flowing backwards. We're talking about big Black Warrior River Valley from present day to Tuscaloosa to Demopolis. It says there was 28 massive flat-topped earthen mounds arranged systematically around a central plaza. We're talking cities of gold, Mound Towns. So I'm just going to put this in perspective. If the New Madrid is flooded, it's flowing backwards, then all these rivers, Big Black River, Big Black Warrior River, Big Black River, affluent of the Mississippi River, rising West Webster County, Mississippi, and after a southwest course of 330 meters, flowing into the Mississippi 20 miles south of Vicksburg, right? So imagine this is the Mississippi breaking off to the Big Black River, flooding, man. Imagine it. What's really going on here? The War of 1812. The New Madrid earthquake, Big Black Warrior Village River. Let's get it. In 1793, Lieutenant Governor Colonel John Graves introduced a bill to prevent the further importation of slaves into Upper Canada, they say, and to free the children of slaves in Canada when they reached the age of 25. To American blacks, the nation to the north emerged as the Promised Land. We're just connecting the dots here. We're just following the drinking goal. To American blacks, the nation to the north emerged as the Promised Land. Almost immediately, large numbers of blacks began heading for Canada, following the Big Dipper in the Ursa Major constellation. A long-drawn, from the two stars at the right end of the Big Dipper's bowl leads north to Polaris, the guiding North Star. As the sign proclaimed, they followed. As the song proclaimed, they followed the drinking gourd. Let's get it. We're talking copper-colored cons found here in America. In America, found here in America, a long draw from the two stars at the right end of the Big Dipper's bowl leads north to Polaris, the guiding North Star. They followed the drinking gourd. Let's get it. I've been saying this. They followed the drinking gourd. Little do you know, between the drinking gourds is the constellation Draco, the dragon. Let's get it. We're talking Shawnee dragons. Let's get it. The Little Dipper and Polaris and Draco and Rastaban. Let's get it. We're talking Tuckabatchee Town, right? Routes of the Underground Railroad. Why is everything stemming from this central location along the far from the Mississippi? We're talking Tuckabatchee Town was stomped down, man. Let's get it. We're talking going to Canada, Western Canada, West, Mexico, the West Indies, northern cities. Let's go. As with most early Black Canadian families, I'm just connecting the dots, rock with me. The story begins several generations ago, in this case with a woman named Lucretia, a Cherokee who married Timothy Armstrong in Indian Territory. Let me know what you think. Leave a note in the comments. Although Lucretia never went to Canada, she was progenitor of a family that would help settle 3 Western Canadian provinces. Standing more than 6 feet tall, Timothy Armstrong was a slave, they say, to the Cherokees. We're connecting the dots. A slave to the Cherokees. Rival tribes sold to each other to pacify treaties with Euro-Americans. The Indians praised him for his skill in hunting and in battle. Lucretia and Timothy had 2 daughters. The younger, Lily, was born in 1882. At 16, Lily married Walter Raleigh Shaw. We're connecting the dots. We're talking Shawnees. Let's get it. Are you the Shawnees? Lily Armstrong married Walter Raleigh Shaw. Let's get it, man. Looking like your grandma and grandpa. 1898. The general exodus of Negroes in Canada, they say. An opportunity for the Negro in Western Canada. More Negroes coming to settle in Alberta. Let's get it, man. We're connecting the dots. We're talking mud flood. 1812. War breaks out between the British. Come on, man. We're talking pioneers. Tecumseh stomps down every house in Tuckabatchee. We flee north. Junkins in now Wildwood in northern Alberta, west of Edmonton. Shown as the family of Tony Payne, an early settler. We're talking copper-colored cons. Found here in America. We're talking migration was as prophetic because in her words, Hawaii freed us. Hawaii freed us from what? He must say, freed us. He freed us. Thus heading north, including Joseph Maddie and 10 children, taking a circuitous route through St. Paul, Minnesota, and on to the Winnipeg, Regina, and Saskatoon, they made their way to Battleford, where they filed a claim in Maidstone. Maddie Mays, a resident of Alberta, Canada. Hawaii freed us, said Maddie Mays. From what? We're talking New Madrid earthquakes of 1811 and 1812. We're talking Tecumseh stomps down every house in Tuckabatchee. Blacks flee north from Alabama, Georgia, Tennessee, South Carolina, Virginia, North Carolina. In spite of the important role that it played during the colonial period in the early years of the American Republic, the Shawnee tribe of American Indians has been largely ignored. So let's connect the dots. Has been largely ignored. Anthropologists particularly have slighted the Shawnees despite the tribe's rich culture and pivotal position. Only rarely do they figure in those cultural historical summaries of American Indians that appear as college textbooks. Though the Iroquois, Cherokee, or the Natchez, and you'll probably get some information. Ask about the Shawnees, and you will probably get a blank stare. One of the least known groups of Native Americans, but one of the most popular Shawnee chiefs, Tecumseh and Tenskwatawa. My approach has been simply to assemble as much cultural data regarding the Shawnees as possible, from published accounts, documents, and Shawnee informants, to weigh this information, digest it, and then present it in an orderly and interesting fashion. Here I am, highly advanced tribe, this remarkable and highly advanced tribe, one of the highest representatives of the Algonquian stock. They will attain the prominence they deserve. A historical summary. So a short summary of these matters may help to place my account of the historical Shawnee culture. In Sauk, Fox, and many other Algonquian languages, the same name, the name for the Shawnees, Shawanogi, Shawanoja, is its variance meaning Southerners. Southerners, right? We're talking Tuckabatchie Creeks. We're talking Shawnees. We're talking Cherokees. Let's go. Chickasaws. Catawbas. Earlier students of the Shawnees usually accepted this name at face value and assigned the tribe a southeastern homeland. Right? We're talking following the drinking gourd, man. Let's get it. Scholars have placed the Shawnees in the Ohio country just prior to European contact. It says they are of the opinion that the Shawnees can be equated with at least a part of the Fort Ancient aspect. We're talking Mound Towns, an archaeological culture dated from about AD 1400 to 1650, they say. We're talking Mound Towns. Says the dead were buried beneath the floors of houses in some instances. In other cases, they were placed in refuse pits and specially dug graves in the village, in subfloor pits beneath mounds of earth. Shalakatha, Ohio, to Shalakatha, Mound City, or within funerary mounds composed of alternate layers of earth and layers of bodies. Some of the graves in mounds or cemeteries were lined with stone slabs. It is extremely risky, they say, to assign the names of historical tribal groups to archaeological manifestations. Archaeological manifestations. We're talking about effigy mound, serpent mound, Fort Ancient culture, right? As summarized above, represents at least part of the ancestors of the Shawnees. Are the so-called mound builders descendants of Abraham? Let's get it. We equate the prehistoric Shawnees with at least part of the Fort Ancient archaeological culture, though other groups were probably involved as well. Would include northern tribes of the Illinois Confederacy. It says Tanner and the Indians of Ohio and Indiana prior to 1795. The earliest historical mentions of the Shawnees tend to reinforce the archaeological data by placing them in the upper Ohio Valley and the valley of the Cumberland River, one of the major tributaries from the south, right? We're talking rivers, the Shawanoas. Let's get it. Ohio Valley and the valley of the Cumberland River. We're talking the New Madrid earthquake. The Mississippi flows backwards. We're talking Big Black Warrior River, Big Black River, Alabama, Ohio, Mississippi, Georgia. Let's get it. Tennessee. It says descending the Mississippi, reaching the mouth of the Wapakuga. The Wapakugo. This river flows from the lands of the east, where dwell the people called Shawanoans. Shawanoans in so great numbers that in one district there are as many as 23 villages and 15 in another. Quite near one another, this same location is echoed on Franklin's 1681 map, which places the Shawanoans 15 villages south of the Wabash, Ohio, and a similar interpretation may be drawn from Marquette's map. Right? We're talking the Shawanoas. We're talking T'Challaka, T'Shalakatha. Let's go. T'Challakatha, Shalakatha, Ohio, T'Challaka. Let's get it. Connecting the dots here. Just connecting the dots. We're talking a 1684 map by John Baptiste Franklin showed a detail of northeast Tennessee, Casca, Cascaquinampagamo. Casquinamapagamo means many warriors river. Note that below T'Challaka was a Muskogee Creek town named Cataloochee people. Sippy is a Panoan suffix for river. We're talking T'Challaka, T'Challakatha, Tennessee River. Cheeska, keep in mind the Cheeska, Chalaka. Let's get it. The last mention of the Cheeska on a European document is a 1684 map of North America by John Baptiste Franklin. Showed the Cheeska living on the Holston River in extreme northeastern Tennessee near their allies, the Apache, Catawba, and Chickasaw. To escape the Cherokees, these three peoples moved southward. To escape the Cherokees was popping off. These three peoples moved southward to western Georgia and northeastern Alabama. Western Georgia and northeastern Alabama. Initially, the Catawba were in present-day Catoosa County, Georgia, but later they moved to present-day Harris County, Georgia. Chickasaw moved to present-day Talladega County, Alabama. We're talking Tuckabashie Creeks, for every house was stomped down in Tuckabashie Town. The message was heard. The Indians grabbed their weapons and prepared for war. Much more information is provided by Franklin's map, based on LaSalle's Indian data and perhaps on the testimony of two Shawnees who were with LaSalle. The map shows the upper half of what we know as the Ohio River, with the alleged Ohio Owls Mosapeleasipi als Ulligan. North of the upper Ohio are depicted in legend Mosopelia 8 Villa Detroits. Detroits points out that the name Mosopelia is translatable as Big Turkey in Shawnee and Mosopeliasipi as Big Turkey River. Sippy meaning river, Mississippi. Mosopeliasipi, Big River, Big Turkey River. Let's go. Therefore, these people may have been Shawnees or closely related Shawnee-speaking people. We're talking about the Siska. The Siska, the branch of the Flume of St. Louis, the St. Louis River, which is south and east of that where the Mosopelia villages are placed to legend. Skippacasipi, Ola Riviera Blue. Skippacasipi translate blue river in Shawnee and confirms the French translation of the term. Skippacasipi, Blue River, as to this day the name the Shawnees applied to the Cumberland, Old Shalakatha. Let's go. North of this branch, almost intermediately between it and the Mosopeliasipi are the Chaskapi, possibly the Kiskapoo division of the Shawnees, and on its banks the Megawachaki, probably the Makoshe division. South of the river are the Siska. The Siska. South of the river are the Siska, which were probably another Shawnee group. Let's get it, we're connecting the dots. Are you, the Shawnees, the Dracons found here in America? This same map also traces a route from the Chesapeake, Megawachiki, and Siska to the St. Augustine, Florida, identified as Chemin par les Casquinampo et las Shawanoans vont entrar aux Espagnols. The route traveled by the Casquinampo and the Shawnees in trading this with the Spanish. This Spanish trade is verified by Marquette, Illinois. So the Shawnees was tapped in with the French and the Spanish, and eventually the English. The Fort Ancient Madisonville site. Spanish trade may account for the presence of European trade materials at the Fort Ancient Madisonville site. All right, we're talking Mound Towns. The Cumberland River is frequently referred to as La Riviere des Shawanoans, or River of the Shawnees. On early maps and documents, describes the Ohio as receiving two considerable branches before falling into the Mississippi, the Agawaski, and from the north, and La Riviere des Shawanoans from the south. He also refers in 1681 to a Shawnee captain who lived on a large river that falls into the Ohio, right? We're talking river people, the Shawnees, right? The T'Challakas. Let's get it, Madisonville site. Mound Towns. The Madisonville site is the largest and most thoroughly studied village of the late Fort Ancient culture. They're connecting the Fort Ancient culture with the Shawnees, who are connected to Alabama, Georgia, Tennessee, Ohio, Kentucky, South Carolina. Let's go. It says local residents called the site the pottery field between 1879 and 1911. It's excavated the remains of numerous houses, storage pits, and burials. The presence of glass beads and bits from iron kettles indicates these villagers may have been among the first native Ohioans to learn of the coming of Europeans to America. Man. So on some apocalypto types. The first native Ohioans to learn of the coming of Europeans to America. We're talking Mound Towns, exploiting the graves of the mound builders near Madisonville, Cincinnati. The Madisonville are the so-called mound builders, descendants of Abraham, right? Exploiting the graves of the mound builders near Madisonville, Cincinnati. Let's go. It says Shawnees informed Governor Beauharnois of their intention to remove from two villages on the Allegheny to La Riviere the Shannons, near the Wabash and the River of the Cherokees in Tennessee, stating these are positively the lands where we were born. Positively the lands where we were born. American. Copper-colored races found here in America. La Riviere des Shawanoans. These are possibly the lands where we were born. Although identification of the Cumberland as the river of the Shawnees, keep that in mind. The Cumberland is the river of the Shawnees. It says because of their vagueness and inaccuracy, it can be done indirectly by comparing the John Mitchell map of 1755 with the Bellin Carte de l'Amérique, America Septentrional of the same year. The Cumberland River of the English map is clearly identical with the river des ancient Shawanoans. The ancient Shawanoans are the so-called mound builders, descendants of Abraham. We're talking lost tribes and promised land, the seed of Abraham. It says very likely there were two concentrations of the Shawnees in the late 17th century, one on the upper Ohio, the other on the Cumberland, and these may be represent divisions of the tribe. We're talking ancient Shawanoans on the John Mitchell map. Let's go. Rock with me. Talking the John Mitchell map. The Shawanoans. Let's go. I'm going to zoom out for you, get you some perspective. All right. It's an old map, 1755, the John Mitchell map. We're talking Georgia. We're talking the Shawnees. All right. We're talking the Creeks, Creek Indians, the Choctaws, right? Let's go. We're talking Chickasaw, South Carolina, the Cherokees, North Carolina. We got Virginia, Ohio, the Kaskaskias, the Wabash, the Cumberland River, the river of the Shawnees, the Cumberland River. These are all tributaries of the Mississippi, the Cumberland River, the river of the Shawnees, the ancient Shawanoans, the Catawba River. Let's get it. It's going to be hard to read, but we're going to get it though. The Six Nations have extended their territories to the River Illinois ever since the year 1672, when they subdued and were incorporated with the ancient Shawanoans, the native proprietors of these countries in the River Ohio, the ancient Shawanoans, the native proprietors of these countries, copper-colored cons found here, besides which they claim a right of conquest over Illinois and the Mississippi. The Ohio Indians amidst of the tribe, we're talking ancient Shawanoans. Those about Philadelphia are called Shawanoas, right? The ancient Shawanoas. Let's get it. We was out here, the ancient Shawanoas. Let's go. Let's go, man. Can't make this up, man. Let me know what you think. Leave a note in the comments. Got it. All right, back to the presentation. ancient Shawanoans, who are the allies of New France. It says a documented pattern of Iroquois expansionism and aggression toward neighboring tribes, particularly the Shawnees. So let's connect the dots. We're talking ancient antagonisms and jealousies between the tribes. It says Iroquois expansionism and aggression toward neighboring tribes, particularly the Shawnees. These attacks gain in intensity and ultimately result in the Shawnees being driven out of the Ohio and Cumberland valleys. To save themselves, the Shawnees split into a number of fragments, probably on the basis of their 5 traditional divisions. Some went to Fort St. Louis in Illinois, remaining there till 1688. We're talking ancient antagonisms and jealousies amongst the tribes. All right, let's get it. Other Shawnees moved into the southeast, reaching the Savannah River opposite of what's now Augusta, Georgia. Georgia, Alabama, Tennessee, Kentucky, Ohio, Indiana, Detroit. It's all connected, man. We're talking ancient Shawanoas, right? These Shawnees evicted the Westo tribe. Says for a decade or so, the Carolinians regularly supplied the Shawnees with arms and purchased slaves by taking them in raids upon fugitive Westos, Winyos, Appomattoxes, Cherokees, and Choctaws. So again, we're talking rival tribes being sold as for treaties and to satisfy treaties with Euro Americans, right? So is slavery really what they telling us it was, or is it something else? Just connecting the dots, right? We following the drinking order here. Lawson, who traveled through Carolina in 1701, mentions the Shawnees as the Savannahs, a famous warlike friendly nation of Indians living to the south. The Shawnees in Savannah, right? We're talking Carolina, Savannahs. We're talking Georgia. So hold on, I'm moving too fast. Says Shawnee in 1707, under attack by Carolina, some of the Savannah River Shawnees moved to Pennsylvania. So we tapped in with Pennsylvania. It says in 1715, after involvement in the Yamasee War, the rest 67 men left. Some fugitives from the Savannah River settled on the Chattahoochee, near to what is presently Mobile, Alabama in 1716. So Alabama, Georgia, Tennessee, Pennsylvania, Ohio, Kentucky, Carolinas, it's all connected. They later moved to the Tallapoosa and were incorporated into the Creek Nation. For every house in Tuckabatchee was stomped down. Right? It would appear that those Shawnees who settled in Pennsylvania, like their Susquehannock hosts and other groups in the area, such as the Munsees, Nanticokes, Delawares, and the Connaughts, were clearly under the domination of the Iroquois. Right? We're talking rival tribes, ancient antagonisms and jealousies. What are we really talking about? Under the domination of the Iroquois. The Iroquois had their foot on the neck of some of these tribes. In 1697, Captain John Tillman reported that Chavaneux Shawnee Indians, being about 30 men, beside women and children, lived within 4 miles of the Caristoga, near the town of Costadaga, on the Susquehanna River, lower down and submit themselves and pay tribute to the Susquehannocks and the Senecas, right? We're talking tribes, rival tribes, ancient antagonisms, and jealousies. Right? We're talking treaties, man. Paying tribute. We're talking some tribes just, you know what I mean? What's going on here? Let me know what you think. In 1700, the Shawnees of the Pequot Division under their Sakim Mopesa made a treaty with Maryland. We're talking treaties. In the following year, made one with William Penn. The Iroquois continued to insist upon their position as overlords of the Shawnees. So he's trying to be big dog. The Iroquois is trying to run the Shawnees. You got to ask yourself why. What's really going on here? What's really going on here? Excuse me. And when possible, made the Shawnees toe the mark. Thus, in 1711, the Iroquois forced Opesa to abdicate his position and appointed Oneida's chief Carddawana to govern this group in his stead. It says at first the settlement of Pennsylvania gave them liberty to settle in the westerly parts of that province, and as a badge of their cowardice, forced them to wear petticoats. Man, what's going on here? They gave them, however, the appellation of cousins and allowed them to claim kindred of the 5 nations as their uncles, man. So they popping off on the Shawnees, man. It ain't right. He says Rogers is an unreliable historical source, yet his statement here accurately reflects not only the Iroquois view, but the official view of the colonial authorities who for many years found it to their convenience to deal with the Shawnees and Delawares and Western tribes through the Iroquois. So basically the Iroquois is trying to control the whole Indian situation, man. What's going on here? It says in 1731, James Logan, provincial secretary of Pennsylvania, proposed a council to be held with the Six Nations, but have absolute authority as well over the Shawnees as all other Indians, that by their means the Shawnees may not only be kept firm to the English interest, but likewise be induced to remove from Allegheny near to the English settlement. Right? So the Iroquois are insisting that they have authority over the Shawnees. It says, needless to say, this official Iroquois colonial government view was a distortion of the facts, and neither the Shawnees nor the Delawares viewed their situation in this manner. So the Shawnees and Delawares, like, I don't know what the Iroquois talking about. They not running nothing around here. It says the influence of the Iroquois on both the Shawnees and the Delawares was nevertheless strong until the outbreak of the French and Indian War, when both groups disregarded the Six Nations of the Iroquois and allied themselves with the French. So they was like, man, bump the Iroquois, man. We doing our own thing. Allied themselves with the French. Even after they ceased to be politically dominated by the Iroquois League, both Shawnees and Delawares continued to associate with and exchange cultural elements with the Mingos. The Mingos were young Iroquois people who had gone to the Ohio and Indiana country to hunt for meat and peltry, found the country to be agreeable. So the Mingos was the young Iroquois. They must have been cooler, tapped in with the Shawnees, Ohio, and Indiana. They had gradually dissociated themselves from their eastern kinsmen and did not feel bound by the agreements between the League and the English, who were constantly calling for them to return to their original homes in the east. The League, in fact, often gave their Mingo kinsmen the same shabby treatment which they meted out to the Shawnees and Delawares. So the Mingos, the Shawnees, and Delawares is having to deal with the Iroquois and think they running stuff and trying to, you know what I mean? So they like, nah, we doing our own thing. It says in 1731, about 1,200 Shawnees lived on the headwaters of the Ohio, with others on the Juniata and Susquehanna and some in the Wyoming Valley. The Wyoming group moved west about 1743, founding Logstown on the Ohio. The settlement, later called the Lower Shawnee Town, was established at the mouth of the Scioto River sometime before 1739, perhaps by members of the Hawakila division who fled down the Ohio in 1735 after killing an Iroquois chief. So they popping off. It's going down in Prophet's Town. After killing an Iroquois chief, they went on a run. It says 1747 they abandoned this town and moved south, where after a war with the Chickasaws, they settled among the Creeks, right? So it's all back to Georgia, Alabama. They abandoned this town and moved south, where after a war with the Chickasaws, we're talking ancient antagonisms and jealousies, a war with the Chickasaws, they settled among the Creeks. By 752, a large group had returned to Lower Shawnee Town, which became the tribal center for this part of the Shawnees. Another section moved to the Cumberland, settling near the site of present-day Nashville, Tennessee. The Chickasaws drove them from this location in 1756, and they moved to Lower Ohio. We're talking ancient antagonisms and jealousies, war amongst the tribes. The Chickasaws drove them from this location and moved to Lower Ohio. James Adair, The History of the American Indian. James Adair, the swarthy Irish trapper who married a Cherokee woman. It is a remarkably clear-eyed piece of ethnography to modern eyes, they say, with one howling peculiarity. Adair devotes the entire book to his argument that the American Indians were a lost tribe of Israel. A kink, Thomas Jefferson called this. Adair devotes the entire book to his argument that the American Indians were a lost tribe of Israel. We're talking ancient antagonisms and jealousy, war amongst the tribes. Curses, man. Let's go, man. We're talking. Let's get it, man. We back. Episode number 28. The Most High is great, man. Lost tribes and promised lands. The seed of Abraham. This was one of the facts about the Native Americans that led to the speculation of the colonists that the Indians might be the lost tribes of Israel, once a single people, but now cursed by Hawa for their punishment, for their presumption in seeking to build the Tower of Babel, and condemned to be divided and to speak a multitude of strange tongues. Many of these tribes were constantly at war with each other. Let's get it. Ancient antagonisms and jealousy amongst the tribes. The Chickasaws fighting the Cherokees fighting the Chickasaws, the Shawnees fighting the Chickasaws, the Cherokees and the Creeks. Come on now. All constantly at war with each other. Tecumseh stomps down every house in Tuckabatchee Town. Let's get it, man. One time for the tribe. All praise the Most High. Allah. We out of here for this one. Let me know what you think. Leave a note in the comments.